Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Sports. Daniel here joining you once again, and to continue our series of one-to-one interviews, I'm delighted to welcome ultra-runner and mental health advocate as well, David O'Connor. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having us, Daniel. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, David. Listen, your story is amazing, but I want to start quickly to what you're doing currently to raise money for Movember. And you just completed it 60 kilometers around the block. How did that go?
I don't know how I look on that camera, but it might give you an indication as to how it went. It was Monday morning. I set out. So I live just off the Kilmore Road there, just in our town, Coolock, just if anybody knows it. And I set off around my block to do 60k, and I sort of labelled it around a mental block. Obviously, just whatever about the physical challenge, there's a big mental ask for something like that. The reason I picked 60k was part of Movember, which is we lose 60 men to suicide every hour, every day around the world, which I think is, that's a figure that's quite striking. And you'll see a lot of people are kind of doing 60k in a month. Like normal people doing normal stuff, like spacing it out over a month. But I enjoy a challenge. I enjoy endurance running. So I felt this would be a very good test. And of all the different challenges that I've done over the couple of years, it proved to be the hardest one I've done. It was a very difficult day. I know we were speaking there before we logged on there. Like I was saying, it was, I don't know if it was being on a Monday with everybody else going about their business, the traffic, the weather, the winter, COVID, lockdown.
There's a combination of so many things, isn't there?
Yeah. And obviously I'm involved in Shells, so Shells getting relegated on Sunday probably didn't help either. Like
I wasn't going to bring it up.
Yeah, well, it's hard to avoid. But yeah, it was a strange one. So I started the day quite normally, like I had to drop my son to school. Came home, like I'd fueled well, I was hydrated, I was ready to go. But just as I stepped out, at the driveway, I just knew something just didn't feel right. Like I really wasn't firing, and I was fighting with that all day, along with the weather and the chills, and it was a very difficult process, I have to say. And obviously, when you're passing your house every 2 or 3 minutes, it's almost calling you. So I'll just go in, call it a day, and it was a very peculiar experience.
But just on that around the block, because I love when I go for runs, I have to go somewhere where I can't bail halfway through. I don't know how you did that running around the block. How many times would you have passed your own house?
I think it worked out. We did the maths. I think it was 141 laps.
Jesus Christ! Yeah.
Me block. I think I lost count, but my maths isn't great. But I sat down beforehand to work out the meters and that. I think it was about 140. It's funny because it is it's something I consider a bit of a strength, because a lot of the challenges that I've done, and again, you were asking me again before this, like I've done 10 marathons in 10 days on a running track, which is similar. It's a 400-meter loop. So that was, I think it was 105 laps a day. So that's 1,055 laps of a running track in 10 days. I don't know if I find a bit of comfort in that. I'm not too sure, but it's certainly something that I can play to my strengths. It's something I know I can handle. And what I mean by that, it's something I know I can break it down and make it manageable.
Yeah.
And what I always do with these challenges is, say on Monday, it wasn't a 60k run. I broke it down into blocks of 5k. So in my head, it was like, right, we're just going for a 5k run. Once you hit 5k, it's like, right, tick that box. We're going to do another 5k run, and just break it down bit by bit as you go, to make it more manageable. Because I think if you go out with that mindset, right, I have to go and run 60k, that's all consuming. It's far too much to digest. First thing in the morning, it's too much for your head to handle. So that's how I try and manage these things, and it's the system that has served me well so far.
That's it. Just listening to you talk about breaking down 5k, I can relate to that completely. Like when I was running 5k during lockdown, it was the first proper time I did a bit of running myself. I was involved in the GA team, but I used to break it down into 1Ks and half a K, whatever would get you out of bed, like, do you know what I mean? But I can relate a lot to that, just breaking it down into small different cycles. And you've been doing a lot of endurance running, like you mentioned, but is it just that case of just breaking things down into small bites for those that, for example, aren't massively into running but would like to still get into a little bit of it? Is it just a case of breaking it down into the smallest chunks possible just to get you right? I'll just get one of the 5Ks done, for example.
Yeah, and I think even like, I know when I did I said I've always been involved in running, athletics, sport, football. But I suppose to go back with running, when I did my first marathon in 2015, like, I think that's where I sort of really honed in on this concept where you're just like, right, that tree that's 20 meters ahead, get to that. Okay, there's somebody standing on the corner, get to him. So just really scaling it back. And do you know what it is? I think when something's working, it's maybe important not to question it too much. Do you know that way? Maybe don't analyze it. Don't go looking to understand it fully, because you might just mess it up. It's just something that works for me, and I'm going to carry it with me for as long as it works. And like you just said there, I think people would have a similar look with the things that they're doing, and maybe put a different name on it, but it's still essentially the same thing. So like you said there, right, get half a K done and we'll get up to 1K. It's the exact same thing, isn't it? Like, so I think just finding what works for you, and don't overthink it sometimes, because I think in the age of social media and that, we're all very good at that. We're all very good at overanalyzing and putting a lot of detail in things, and sometimes you don't have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I like that kind of once something's working for you, don't overanalyze it, and just kind of use that, and then kind of maybe overanalyze other things that maybe you can try and improve. But I want to take it back a little bit in terms of your own mental health, because you spoke a lot about the male suicide stat, and which comes up every November, and I think it's a shocking statistic, really. And I know we've had people on the podcast, for example, I'm just thinking here, Cormac Ryan would have spoken a lot about men's body image. There's a lot of things not talked about that, the female equivalent might be a little bit more open in the public domain. But can you tell us a little bit about your own story in terms of your struggles before and how you're getting on at the moment?
Yeah, no problem. Firstly, just a shout out to Cormac, because he's an absolute gentleman, an absolute legend of a man. And it's funny, like you say about me doing running, there's not a hope he'd get me on a bike cycling across America, so fair play to him.
Yeah, that's episode 19 for those that haven't listened to it. It's a brilliant chat, like you said. And he's going to be cycling around America, COVID depending, in April, I think it is. And he's doing Trojan. But he's brilliant, even do his training, for example. And he's telling us about his struggles during training, that every training is not a brilliant session, which is kind of what Instagram would tell you,
Yeah, no, he's very honest. He's very raw. I do follow his stories and that. He's great. So yeah, look, I suppose about myself. Like, look, I mean, it goes right back to school. I was bullied in school, which I kind of took. He's sort of on a kid in school. Kids get bullied, right? Fair enough. So I was picked on because of my image. I was kind of a chubby kid. And like I said, I accepted, and I always say this, it's when you grow up looking at films, you're looking at Hollywood, and you think about in the 80s, 90s, the stereotype in a lot of these films was the chubby kid was the pit of all the jokes. Any story about rite of passage of a group of young kids, it's always the chubby kid that was picked on. So when you're watching all, the Goonies is a great example of it. Like the geeky kid in the Goonies, the chubby one, he's the one that's like the joke. So when you're growing up looking at all that, you're taking all that in. So like I say, when you're the butt of all them jokes, to me it was just normal. It was like, well, no, that's supposed to happen. I'm the chubby kid. So I kind of accepted it. And sort of to compound that, when I was 14, I actually got mugged on my way home one day. I got pinned up against a wall and had a needle. I had a syringe held up to my neck. So, I was low enough in confidence as it was. And when something like that happens, it just put the fear of God into me. And I kind of became afraid of living. I was quite outgoing, quite sociable. But after that, like when something like that happens to you so close to your home, it's very difficult, that you're like, I don't want to walk down that road ever again,
So it was just outside your house, or was it very close?
It was only around the corner. Like, I wasn't far from where I live. And it was a strange one, just maybe it's because it was, the mid-90s or whatever. I don't know, but nothing was ever really done about it. It was almost like, well, these people, they pop up every now and again. Like, but when you think about it now, like, it's like I should have gone straight to the guards. I don't know, but like I was very young, but it put a fear into me and a paranoia into me, that has kind of stayed with me, to be honest. And not surprisingly, I've a bit of a fear of needles, which is, probably not too surprising to come out of it. So I suppose like one of them things alone is enough to knock a teenager who had low self-esteem, low confidence. So one of them is enough to do that. But you put the two of them together, it's a lot to take on. So I suppose what kind of happened then, to fast forward a bit, it was probably my mid-20s, early to mid-20s. Like I started reflecting back. I started thinking back then, to being in school and what went on and that incident. And I got really angry. I started getting really annoyed because I let this happen to myself.
So you're annoyed at yourself as opposed to...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was like these bullies picked at me, and I started turning it inwards. I was like, I can't believe I let this happen to myself. Like, what were you thinking? So, like, quietly, I'd gone through a lot. Like, I'd lost a lot of weight. Now, naturally enough, I'd taken a bit of a stretch as I got a bit older, but I got too thin. I was probably starving myself a bit. I was very self-conscious about my image. I actually still am. I think a lot of people are, I hate being in the gym, taking my top off in the dressing room, or, if you're in a dressing room or anything like that, I'm always a little bit off. But it's something I'm actually kind of getting better at. I think, when I imagine closer to 40, it's like, look, we're all going to have a few wobbly bits, like, but yeah, the kind of mid-20s, like I was saying, I just turned it on myself, and probably I'd say for a period of 6 or 7 years, I completely and utterly tore myself to shreds psychologically. So I started a diary. I called it the Hate Pages, and I wrote in that every day, just about what a piece of shit I am, and everything that was wrong with me, and anything I did wrong, and just every flaw I could find about myself, I wrote in this book. And I backed that up with all this self-talk in the mirror. It was similar enough, just put myself down every morning. And it's funny, it's the regular conversation when we talk about mental health. Like it was what I put out to the world was this facade. Like everyone would have just said, "Oh Jesus, Dave, he's a little bit moody, fair enough, but very happy-go-lucky, good crack, always on a night out. Be there for his mates, he'd be at all the parties." And just behind it all, like I was tearing myself to shreds. So I was working in a job. I got a job in a bank. Probably, a lot of my generation, like I went to college after school. I was very young leaving school. I was 16 in sixth year. So I was extremely young doing my leaving cert. And I went off to college, and I had my degree from college when I think I was 20. You're into the big bad universe, and I hadn't a clue. I hadn't a notion.
It's very young to be put in that
it situation. Is, and I really, you're just looking at it. I'm looking back now thinking, Jesus, like, hadn't a notion. Could barely tie my shoelace, like, but yeah, I got a job in a bank because I was just kind of struggling career-wise, and my mother suggested it. You remember the good old days? If you were a priest, a guard, or working in the bank, you'd made it, like. So I definitely wasn't going to be a priest anyway, that's for sure. But I got a job in the bank, and naturally enough, like initially you sort of get a high because you feel like you're contributing, you found something new. But it didn't take long to, again, sort of just tear the life out of me, because you're looking sort of 2007, 2008, it was the start of the recession. And you were dealing with a lot of high-end customers like solicitors, a lot of corporate customers that were losing millions, and they were walking into a bank and you were the first person they were seeing. And I mean, in terms of training, in terms of how to deal with situations, you were basically told, "Oh, tell them that you understand their frustration." And you're like, what is that? Like, you can't just turn around every knock out that line.
You're not a robot, like.
It was very difficult. It was a toxic environment. what I found with it was, firstly, there was very little diversity. It was just, you know, Caucasian, white male and female, all mid-20s, who did something else in college but needed a job. And a lot of people very bitter, just not wanting to be there, myself included. And it just wasn't a nice environment, very big drinking culture. And I've never drank. I've never drank alcohol. Wow. And I'm not into like going out on Mondays and Tuesday nights to a pub after work. And listen, for people who do it, if that's your thing, brilliant. But what happens with that is when you're not in that group, you're coming in the next day and so you're out of conversation then, you know, so you're almost excluded. But it was a very, very difficult environment to work in. I'd be very keen to stress though, like I made 3 extremely good friends there that I'm still friends with now. So it was still important in terms of connection and a period in my life where you are starting to mix with people, you know, people away from college, away from your area where you live. So I did make some very good friends. But it was a very difficult environment to work in. And on top of what I've told you there a few minutes ago about this psychological torture, it just brought me to a place where like I really just wanted to give up. And the way I put it is I lost faith in people and I lost faith in myself. So I wanted an out. I needed to get out. I was like, how am I going to handle this? Like, and again, I was so good at this disguise. The effort I put into this, it's actually quite frightening when I think back. I decided, I know I'm going to go to Spain. I'm going to get some magical coaching job in football in Spain and make it look as if I'm going off to live the life, so I can leave the bank. And that's what I did. I left and I went to Marbella. And I actually did. I went to do a football coaching session once and kind of made a few excuses. And then for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I just walked up the promenade in Marbella, up and down all day, and just drinking coffee and just being miserable. And it just brought me to a point then where I was like, do you know what? Like, I don't want to live. Like, I want out. And in my head then there was all sorts of suicide ideation, and I just wanted to escape. I want to get out. And I'm careful how I articulate this, Daniel, because I don't want to intimidate listeners or scare listeners or anything, but like, this is my truth. This is what happens. This is, you talk about mental health awareness, it can be a bit fluffy sometimes, and this is how ugly it gets for people. Like, I was suicidal.
It's important to be that open with people, so they, you know what I mean, it's a more real conversation, you know, instead of kind of beating.
No, what I'm saying is I'm careful. I don't want to trigger anything with somebody, but I want to be as honest as possible, as I always am, because there's no point in fluffing this up. I was in a really bad place, and back in 2010, you know, it wasn't as open, it wasn't as accepted, and it was very difficult to sort of know where to turn. So I think I sent you on a piece about this recently. Like, I'll never forget the night. It was Spain were playing Germany in the World Cup semi-final. Spain won 1-0. Puyol scored an unbelievable header. And as you can imagine, Spain won the semi-final of the World Cup. I'm in Spain. The place is absolutely bouncing, and just colour, fireworks. And it was like a film, like everyone's walking that way celebrating, and I'm walking against the crowd with my head down, just not wanting to know. And my phone rang. It was my dad. And I knew, he's like, he just wanted to talk about the match. It was the hardest phone call I ever had in my life, because you start feeling guilty then. Like, I'm pretending not only to myself, but to my family that I'm living this great life over there. And I felt I was letting them down, and it just compounded my misery, compounded the guilt, and just compounded that want. Just, I need to get out of this. So, like, I literally went back to my hostel that night and forging out a plan where I was like, I just want to go to sleep and don't want to wake up. And I was very irritable. I was very, like, I was moving stuff around the room and all. You know, it's really strange, erratic behavior, like, and the owner of the hostel actually came up. She came into the room. She knocked, which was very, very strange, because I'd been there for 2 or 3 weeks, and like I'd never even seen her on that floor. Do you know that way? It was a bit peculiar. I suppose it was some sort of divine intervention, like. And when she came in, I think she knew something wasn't right. But I just burst into tears. I just started crying, like. And typical mammy, she made me a cup of tea. We went downstairs, like, we had a chat, and she was just like, look, you need to get yourself home. And you know, that sort of broke the spell for me at that point, if that makes sense. And got myself home. So I emailed the lady afterwards and just sort of explained a bit more and said thanks very much to her. And it was a very as hard as that is, to be going through that in a different country on your own was like, even talking about it now, it does give me, you know, the hairs on my neck. It's quite scary. But it was a bit of I thought it was a wake-up call, and it snapped me out of things for a while. But unfortunately, like, I found myself back in the same place about 2 years later. Now, what I will say, kind of after that, or in around that time, like, I always remember kind of Googling the symptoms of depression, like looking up, because I knew, I was like, something isn't right here. And you were going through this list of what you might be experiencing, and a lot of stuff made sense. But I kind of joke about this now, like, I deleted the history on my computer afterwards, because I was terrified somebody would come in and see, Jesus, who's Googling depression? Like, the shame, you know, you use that word, the stigma. Like, I was mortified. And I laugh now, as you think of it now, you'd swear I was looking at porn or something, you know, something inappropriate, like, I need to get this off my computer. Whereas I think nowadays, you'd kind of help somebody with that, you know, you'd sort of say, okay, listen, we'll sit down and have a look at this and see if there's anything that makes sense. So, yeah, on the back of that, like 2 years later, look, I pretty much found myself in the same place. I was unemployed for a long time when I came back. Again, I was just embarrassed, because I'm watching my mom and dad get up every morning to go to work, and I'm lying in bed. Like, you know, what am I doing with my life? So I think naturally enough to come away from something as intense as that in Spain and try and bury it, it's not going to take long to kind of resurface. And that's exactly what happened. And like I said, 2 years later, I found myself in a very similar place. And the way I always say it is, it's not as if, like, you know, I wanted to end my life. It was just, I just didn't want to live. I didn't want to be alive. It was like you just wanted to click your fingers and just be gone. So again, found myself in a place where I went down to Glendalough this time, and the whole plan was, I'm not coming back. I'm just going to go into the woods and finish it there, and I'm not coming back. And it was it was a bank holiday Monday in the middle of May 2012, and the place was packed. There was loads of families and kids and everyone, you know, friendly, saying hello, how's things? And I'm being all polite to people. And I remember just thinking, like, again, looking back afterwards, thinking, geez, like, no one had any idea what I was going through. You know, like, I was going on as if I was the happiest person in the world. Like, I was done. I was out of the game. And when you think about it, like, if I'd have pulled someone aside there and just said, listen, I'm sorry, but I'm in a really bad place here. Can I sit with you for 5 minutes? Like, no decent person is going to say, will you go away out of that? Like, so it's funny when I kind of think back on these things, but it gave me a bit of strength seeing all those people and seeing people happy together. And what I actually did then, I said, it was the first time in my life, I said, I need to speak to someone. So I think I was 28 at this stage. It was like, I have suffered with this for 10 years. Like, I need to talk to someone. So I rang a friend of mine, who was actually my tutor in college, an absolute gent by the name of Dave Curran. And he's just someone I idolize. And he's been a bit of a mentor for me in many ways, and still is to this day. So I rang him, and I don't even think he understood what I said, because again, it just all came out, crying my eyes out, like snots and bubbles everywhere. And he just said, listen, he said, drop up tomorrow night. He says, we'll have a chat. And I went up the next day, and he lives up in Finglas. We just walked around the streets of Finglas all night. And the weight it took off my shoulders, it was the first time in my life I had gone through everything I had held inside me for that long. And you know, that man, he pretty much saved me life. He really did. So he's a really good friend still. I continue to wreck his head on a regular basis when I need somebody to talk to. But like, that's the difference, like just making that decision to talk. And again, it's it's pushed upon people. Make sure you talk, open up and talk to someone. Like, it isn't fucking easy, man. It is so hard to actually to open your mouth, articulate that, get it out there and say it to somebody. It's very difficult. It's very intimidating. But somebody put it really nicely last week. I can't remember where they had this. They were saying, when you speak, you're not looking to create a problem. You're looking for a solution. And if you try and think of it that way, in the same way, if you are looking to solve some other issue, you go looking for a solution, and the solution is for you. So I think that's a nice way to kind of think about it, because it's very difficult to talk about something so personal, and usually something that's very complex as well. So look, that was 2012. I'm conscious here, Dan, that's a hell of a rant.
No, it was, keep going. Yeah,
it's that was 2012. So look, for the last 8 years, I've just given everything to try and make myself a bit stronger. And again, that isn't easy. I've had a lot of blips along the way, and just recently I've come out of a really bad patch, which was in August and September. Which, funny is as hard as that was, it was it's after bringing a bit of clarity. So I had a bit of a breakdown in August. Really difficult period. Now, similar enough, when I tell people, I was like, oh yeah, well, COVID, it's been a difficult year. And it's like, oh, look, it's still stuff from me past I'm trying to deal with here. It's not just COVID, But what's good is, what came out of this is I've been referred to a psychiatrist. So I'm actually being assessed for bipolar. Which to me is like, Jesus, great. If that's what it is, fantastic. After all this time, I know what I'm dealing with. And if it isn't that, grand, I can box that off, forget about it and keep moving and keep learning. So that's the kind of positive that's come out of it. And I've started new medication as well, which was something I was very apprehensive about. But I'm on a very low dosage, a new antidepressant. And it's really helping. It's really helping. And again, it's just, I always say it, I haven't found the answer, but I'm finding little answers along the way. And that's what I'm trying to do all the time, is just keep trying to get a little bit better, trying to get a little bit stronger. And whatever, about 10 years ago, you're trying to look after yourself. Like, my 4-year-old son now knows when daddy is sad, like during that bad period there, like he was daddy, what's wrong? And I'm really like, I'm not having him growing up thinking he's doing something wrong. So there's so much more at stake now, I suppose, where I just really want to try and keep on top of things. So look, that's, I know you said some brief detail. I hope that explains quite a lot in terms of where my head's at and what I've been through. And I sort of, my tagline, I keep saying it's day by day. And I just try to never give up on myself. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Absolutely. Well, isn't it brilliant, David, to take the time to tell your story there, and I think it'll help a lot of people. One thing, like you mentioned there about talking, is you're not creating a problem, because I think that'll be in a lot of people's heads. Like, if I say this now, I'm creating a problem for the other person, but you're not. You're just looking to find a solution to a problem that already exists, and you talking helps things. We had Owen Kelly, it's coming out as we're filming today actually, and he spoke that we work a lot on our physical fitness, like you do yourself and I do. So we need to normalize that bit more, and working on your mental fitness, and being able to break that stigma that still exists, that we're not there yet in terms of open and honest conversations. We're definitely a lot better than we were, say, for example, in 2010, but I think it's important we always kind of normalize mental health and talking about mental health a lot more openly, to help those people that are struggling, that maybe listen to this show or listen to other shows and listen to your story as well.
I think when it comes to being open and talking, and I always, again, I'm like a broken record, because I have the same 5 or 6 sort of points that I fall back on, because it's just sort of things I do think strongly about. Awareness exists. I always say this, mental health awareness does exist, and you say to anybody, they'll know, oh, that is so important. You need to look after your head. But a massive part of that, and a thing to remember, is like awareness can fade very quickly or be replaced by something else very quickly. You look at this year, mental health it's up there, it's topical, because of the year everybody has had, but that could change very quickly. And I think a key to it is the next stage of awareness is, for me anyway, it's understanding and education. And again, I don't mean on a global scale. I'm not talking to go and do a master's in mental health nursing and making sure, understand every intricate detail about your own situation, like really simple things like what works for me, what doesn't, what are the triggers. Is there someone in your family that suffers from, general anxiety? Okay, maybe I'll look that up and see how I can be a bit more supportive and a bit more helpful to them. For example, we had a great guy. I did a live chat with Conal Harper is the guy's name. He runs the CBT Ireland page, so cognitive behavior therapy, and he came on last week and did a live chat, which was brilliant, because I'm always very careful of giving out advice because I'm not bloody qualified. All I have is my own experiences, but he is a mental health professional. But one of the questions that came in from the group, it was a lady who said, like, when I have a panic attack, people around me start panicking. They're like, but my family don't know what to do. What do I do? What do I tell them? And he gave really solid, simple advice for that lady to actually talk to her family and say, here's what's happening to me. Here's what I need you to do when it happens. I'm panicking, you're not. And like a little thing like that could make that process for that lady and her family so much easier. And that was just one line of advice, So I think if you can just get the simple knowledge for you and those around you, I think that's enough. I don't think you need to understand the whole thing on a big scale, because, like I said, it's so bloody complex, and there's so much information, there's so much detail. I think you'd probably, ironically enough, you'd probably upset your mental health if you tried to understand it all. So that's kind of just a few thoughts I have on it myself, and I understand, like, look, people may disagree. But they're just a few things that do sort of stay with me in terms of the conversation around mental health.
And how important have Shelbourne been in your life? Because it sounds like from reading your story that they've been involved all the way through. And you've spoken before about football coaching. You kind of grow up with them, and we actually spoke off air before you came on about trying not. Sorry, it was at the start of the interview about Shelbourne and their relegation.
Yeah. No, like, look. Obviously, anyone involved with Shells this week isn't in a great place. It's been a difficult couple of days. But look, I mean, like, again, you just see the commentary and people talk, we need to do this, we should have done that. It's pub talk. It's like, just let it settle. Relax, lads. Everybody just chill out. But it's been massive since a very young age. Like, I've supported Shells with my family, with all my friends. I've met wonderful people down there over the years. Like, some of my best friends are people I met down in Tolka Park. And I've some incredible memories. The places we've been to, you think, and anyone involved in the League of Ireland club who's travelled to any European game will understand this. Like, the places I travelled to, along with my friends, the memories we made, like we played Rangers in Tranmere in 1998. It's one of my most cherished childhood memories. It was incredible. We were 3-0 up against Rangers after an hour and lost 5-3. Bizarre game. We were in Kilmarnock. We've been to Slovenia, Croatia, Iceland. We played Deportivo.
And there's I was going to say Deportivo La Coruña 2004. Remember it well.
Yeah. So 2004 was amazing. I went on all 4 trips, and I was heading into my final year in college, I think it was. And I was saving all my money because I was doing my last year in England. Blew every penny. But if you ask me, like, I do it all again,
no regrets.
It was so special, and it's memories we have, and we'll always have. And I don't think you'll never get back to that. You know what I mean? And I don't even mean in terms of the football, the team. I just think that period of your life with your friends, I think even if you did it again, it just wouldn't be as wholesome. It wouldn't be as special. So it was incredible. So it's been a massive, massive part of my life. I got involved in coaching at a very young age. First of all, coaching my friends, and Then Malcolm Slattery, who was heavily involved with Shells, he's involved with Shamrock Rovers now. He got me in with the academy. I was coaching the under 18s. I'm managing the under 18s with Shells for, I think I did a good few years there. And then Kevin Doherty, someone I know well, he played with Shells as well. He was the under 19s manager. He got promoted then. He was the assistant with the first team and the manager with the first team. And he promoted me. He brought me up to the first team with him. So, you hear about players sort of saying, I've been a Liverpool fan all my life. It's a dream to play for Shells or to play for Liverpool. For me, like, all I ever wanted to do was coach the first team. And you can ask any of my friends that, they'll tell you, like, that when I started, that's all I ever wanted to do. And it took a long time, a lot of effort. But I was given a chance. Kev gave me a chance. And I was very lucky. I worked with Kevin and I worked with Owen Heardy. So two club legends, like two people I idolised growing up. And I had the privilege of being, standing next to their shoulder as part of their backroom team. So I did 4 or 5 years with the first team. Loved it. Incredible experience. It's intense. It's a full-time job. It's a big ask. It's not very family friendly, I can tell you. It takes a lot of time. But I speak about sort of how to develop myself and how I'm trying to get stronger. When you're surrounded with people like Owen Heardy and Kevin Doherty and the two assistants that were there, Liam Kelly and John Martin, you learn how to handle yourself. And I learned you learn more from them than you will from a week in a coaching course. You learn so much. And it really gave me an insight how to deal with different personalities. And how not to be knocked back and how not to take things so personally, because like it's high level. This is high level sport and it's ruthless. You really got to have your wits about you, and you'll be challenged every day. But amazing experience. And when Owen finished up, then I finished up with the first team, which in a way, like it was almost a breather. It was like, right, that was an intense 5 years, man. So I took a bit of time out just with my family and that, and then I'm back. I went back then last year. I'm coaching now. I look after some. I don't coach a team, but I just kind of help out with the coaches in our academy section, with the girls, and it's great. I love it. It's good to be involved. So I had to take a bit of a break there just with that bad patch I had in August, September. So hopefully get back into it soon. So look, I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate to experience the club from different sides and so many memories from different sides of that. People that I've met, even the players I've met, people I've met who've become friends. And it just evolves all the time. And I suppose the next stage of it now for me is I'm just looking forward to bringing me kids down. That I want me kids to enjoy it as much as I enjoyed it and the life it gave me. And like I do always say, and I was saying to me mates there on Sunday and Monday, it'd be the same as me, lifelong Shells. Like, lads, it doesn't matter. Like Premier Division, First Division, it's about the experience. It's about being with your mates. It's the social side to it. It's disappointing. But come next April, if we're all allowed back down there, restrictions, I said, we're all going to be there. So, just embrace it. And like I say, for me, I just look forward to holding my kids' hands, bringing them down to it and introducing it to them. So, look, they've been brilliant. And as well as that, the club have been fantastic, just with the different challenges that I've done and the charity work that the club have gotten behind me in every way, shape and form, and they've been fantastic. So, no, it's been brilliant. And it's probably a side for anyone who isn't devoted to a team as such with League of Ireland. It's maybe the side they don't see. It's a massive social occasion for people. It's a massive social club. A GA club would obviously be similar, and I think that's maybe advertised more and probably more immersed in a local community, which I understand. But you get that from your League of Ireland club as well. And look, Shells for life. That's my club. As somebody always said, it's the hope that kills you, but you have to keep on. You have to keep on hoping. So, all good.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people kind of look at League of Ireland and it's hard to get into just sports in general. For example, if you're watching NFL, NBA, if you don't have a team to support, it's hard to engross yourself. So I guess if someone's listening, lives in Dublin, Shelbourne, fantastic. I think that's a brilliant club to start themselves on, because you're going to be going from the first division again next year, trying to get promoted. I've seen all the videos of you guys outside the Shelbourne buses and stuff the last few months, socially distanced. What are the flares, isn't it? But it just looks like a brilliant club to be involved in. And like you mentioned, bringing your kids to watch Shelbourne going forward is a great kind of circle of where your life started with Shelbourne, how important that is in your journey, and how Shells can continue. Because probably the most constant part of your life is probably being your football club, like a lot of people's lives,
Yeah, no, big time. And like I say, it's just the friendship is the main thing, It's like, as you can imagine, on Sunday with that game was going on, like the texts, the WhatsApp group, everything was pinging, and like, that's what it's about, man. You win or lose, and you just get on with it, And like, some of the lads have turned off their phones since Sunday, and they're not speaking to anybody. I think I'm a bit past that stage, but look, it's your club is your club, no matter what,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Dave, I want to kind of finish up on just kind of a couple of points and kind of bring it back to where we started in terms of some of the challenges you've done. What's inspired you to do the challenges in terms of raising money and raising awareness? I know obviously your story is a massive part of it.
Yeah, my own story is massive. I think about probably around 2013, 2014, I started blogging about mental health when blogs were a thing, like, and I found that quite liberating. But I think just with the running and sort of, I don't want to say working on my mindset, because that can be a bit of an easy thing to sort of throw out. But I remember completing my first marathon in 2015, which was an incredibly emotional experience after what I'd been through. I absolutely slogged it out, took forever. But when I crossed the line in my first marathon, the Dublin City Marathon, which is a fucking amazing experience, by the way, it's incredible. Pardon me language. I remember it's the first time in my life crossing the line that day where I thought, I can do anything. Like, I can do anything. I'm just after doing, like, it just stayed with me. It was a really special occasion, and I bleeding cried my eyes out at the end of it. But I suppose after that, I got curious then. It was like, Jesus, how far can I go? And speed doesn't interest me. I've always been curious about the long game. How far can you go? And with that, I wanted to tie it together and sort of kind of make a bold statement in terms of mental health, in terms of something to contribute, something to really spark, light a fire in other people. And the idea for the first really big challenge was Aware 10 and 10, which is the 10 marathons in 10 days on a running track. And the idea from that actually came from watching the Olympics in 2016 in Rio. A friend of mine, Mick Clotty, he represents Ireland at marathon. Amazing guy. He's a fabulous head of hair, I'd like to say. A bit of hair envy with him. But he's just fabulous to watch. He's gorgeous just to watch running. He just looks so relaxed, so chilled. He's so far removed from the intensity of professional sport. He's an absolute joy to watch. And I take so much. It's like, that guy lives half a mile away. How is this area only one Olympian? Why don't we have more? But incredibly inspiring. And then, as well as that, I was watching Ciara McGeehan. I think she was in the semi-final of the 1500 meters. And again, she's an incredible athlete. She speaks really openly about anxiety, performance anxiety, and she can be quite intense, but she's always on the cusp of emotion. And I think her journey of bouncing back from injury as well. She had a horrendous injury, a calcanean foot spur is what it's called. Look that up. It's not nice.
Wow.
So
and she's gone on to kick on from there as well.
She's had an amazing year. She's had it's such a shame the Olympics didn't take place, because she was on it, Yeah. But those two Irish athletes, massive influences for me. And from watching Ciara on the track that night, I'm watching Mick, and it just came into my head. I was like, has anyone ever done a marathon on a running track? And I sat with that for a few months. I explored it, and I came up with 10 and 10. And the important aspect of the track, you think about that loop, the monotony. Just
how many laps is it again? Sorry, for
105 and a half laps a day. But sure, the half was on the far side. I still had to come back, so it was 106.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So no, with that, it was like, when you're going around, I said, I can make something with this. So you're like, those constant loops, like that represents the monotony, the pain, the never-ending feeling, the repetitiveness that you'd associate with poor mental health or mental illness. And the flip side of that then for me was, if you work on the right mindset and develop or associate yourself with the right people, like, you'll get through this. And that's exactly what I do. And people ask, was it hard? Of course it was. It was a big ask, not just the 10 days, but like, we'd about 8 months prep for that. But what unfolded was, it was the most incredible 10 days of my life. It just became this conveyor belt of people. It came this celebration of people. And what's lovely about it, I spoke to you there about being in the bank, about losing faith in myself and losing faith in people. Like, that week, I was just in love with people. I was blown away by the support. It was never ending. It just, every time I turned the corner, took the curve, there was somebody coming through that gate to run with me. And that's what made it. That's what it was about. And like, I don't think I'll achieve anything of that magnitude again. And what
It's
I mean
ridiculous. It's a huge achievement, not just itself, but also the way you kind of brought a lot of people with it as well, I think.
Yeah, and it was, do you know what? It was so organic. You know, there was myself and my friend Keelan. She was kind of helping me with the social media side of things and the fundraising. But it was like, I always say, my dad would say, it's like, remember Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. Yeah. And that's what it was. It was very overwhelming, but kind of in a good way. I was really taken aback by it. And what was lovely then, you were talking to people a few months later, and they're saying like, oh, Jesus, I did 4 laps that day, and I've been out running every day since, you know. So, like, that's the beauty of it. And that's what it was about. That's what I wanted to achieve in some capacity, but it achieved so much more than I ever thought it would. And like, even, I don't think I'll fully appreciate it until I'm about 80. Do you know that way? Like, I think it's only when I look back in 10, 20 years, I realize what that did and what it achieved. And obviously we did it for the Wear, fantastic organization, and we raised, I think it was over 16,000. So amazing experience. And it's just kicked me on. It's kept me curious. I want to do other things. But like I say, the big thing, when I commit to a challenge, I need, so like I've said there about the symbolism with the loops, there's always something like that. There needs to be something there in it with, you know, that I can attach myself to, that's sort of relative to my own journey and relative to like the conversation around mental health. And yeah, so look, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, keep coming up with crazy ideas and keep having a bit of fun. That's sort of where I'm at. And the big thing to say is, like, it helps me head, because you're in the moment, you're there, you're in the thick of it. And it does help. I wouldn't do it otherwise, you know.
A big part, I think, of your story is people talking, and how important that is. And I think people's interactions around ideas like this. I know a couple of my mates have done fundraising for support for Drummo, and just having people around, you know, even via Zoom or whatever, you know what I mean, just kind of interacting on social media, I think is very important, particularly now during lockdown where we don't have that same interaction. And I think it all stems from the more time we interact with people, you know, and how important that is. Just a final point then on your Ice Brain, My Mental Health podcast. Do you want to talk a little bit about the ideas behind that and what you're trying to do in terms of keep talking openly about these things that you're going through to help potentially help someone out there that's listening?
Yeah, so I was joking about this, like, if you're looking for something quite shrewd and sophisticated, that don't go to my podcast.
I'm already intrigued.
Yeah, stick to the Guardian today in focus. No, it's again, like, it's just, I use Anchor, the app on my phone. I just hit record, and whatever's in my head, I'll pop out in the day. And I suppose in many ways, it's just to expand on what I post on Instagram. If there's a thought that's in my head or something I've experienced that week that's either good or bad, I just try and put it into podcast form, where you can maybe just elaborate on a thought process a little bit more than obviously what you can type up in a post. So I've had a couple of guests on talking mental health. I try and put out, if there's a book that inspires me, or a film or music, a song, if there's something that just leaves something with me, I'll maybe talk about that a bit and give you my own understandings of what it means to me. And yeah, look, it's basically just different aspects of my own mental health journey is the best way to sum it up. Thrown in with some sort of some inspirations in my life. Like, books are massive.
Well, any books in particular that you're you're looking that you would recommend?
Well, I've a couple of favorites. I don't read a lot of self-help books, to be honest, and the reason is because I just went searching through so many of them, looking for the answer. I think I ruined them for myself, you know. So I've taken a bit of a break from self-help books for the last 2 years. So I'm big into I studied English, and I read a lot of literature, I suppose. Sebastian Barry is an incredible author. I think he's probably the best around at the moment. So if you're into literature, anything he's written is just superb. He's one out this year called Days Without End, which is just one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. It's incredible. I'm big into a lot of old Irish literature, pretentious git that I am. Like I named my son Jace after James Joyce. So yeah, I've just put James and Joyce together, you get Jace. So no, I read just a lot. I read a lot of fiction. I'm trying to think of who else. Probably a couple of my favorite books. There's one called Nothing by Chance by Richard Bach. It's just about barnstorming, flying around America in a plane and landing down in different parts of the world and seeing what unfolds. Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. It's about 800 pages. It's an absolute mess. But the beauty about it is it's a book that requires your full attention. You have to give it your full attention, and it drives you mental. It'll make you laugh. It'll upset you. It'll annoy you, but it requires your full attention, and that's why I love it. So, and then my favorite book then is Joyce, The Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. Just about someone whose principles is against the system, gets to the point where you can no longer fight it and just decides to leave. So it's there's deep meaning, but there's always meaning behind these stories, always meaning that you can relate to the modern day. So that's probably another side to me that people don't see too much, but I love me books.
And then, David, where can people find you to kind of follow your story? Because it seems like you're always doing some challenges, and if you're not, you're out running. I think it's great. I know on my feed to see people running, I'm like, geez, I need to get out. Do you know what I mean? Like, it kind of drives you on a bit. But where can people find you? I think Instagram would be probably your best form.
Yeah, I'm not on Facebook, and I use Twitter at very odd time. But no, just my Instagram page, performance_doc, DOC. Which is just my name. I'm not a doctor. It's the name actually came from I just from when I was doing fitness training. That was my little business, Performance Doc. But I kind of kept it because it just seemed to be appropriate and it seemed to be a catchy sort of name where people remember. So that's where you'll get us anyway. So look, if anyone wants to get in touch, you can. I love chatting to people and connecting with different people online. Because like you said, I think that's massive at the moment. And you do adapt. I think it's nice to chat to people, whether it's through text or voice messages or Zoom. It's good to connect with people.
Yeah, and as you said, I think it's important during lockdown that we're all trying a little bit more to connect online because, as you said, we don't have the physical connection that we normally did. But listen, David, you've been amazing. Thanks a million for coming on the show. And listen, we'll keep following your story. And again, thanks for coming on. And for those that are listening, then make sure to follow David on performance_doc on social media. Thanks, David.
Daniel, thanks very much for having us on. I appreciate it.